is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Cage Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Tony.
And I'm Say.
And we're here to help you break through mental barriers in your creative journey. In this episode, we'll be diving into perfectionism as a creative. So let's get right into it. Let's get into being a perfectionist as a creative and how it could benefit you. Do you feel personally that being a perfectionist has helped you in any ways as a creative?
I definitely feel like as a perfectionist, it's helped me pay more attention to detail. It's helped me be more observant for, myself in the creative process.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Better attention to detail is definitely something that I feel like I pride myself in when it comes to like my creative work and just things that I like to do. And I will also say, just to piggyback off that, I feel like being a perfectionist has also led me to create like a system, like a more streamlined process, I guess you can say, when it comes to how I take pictures or how I edit pictures or how I edit videos and stuff like that. I kind of have like a system where I just feel like I'm a lot more organized than majority people, I would say.
I feel like as a perfectionist, I'm really like particular when it comes to the creative process and I'm making music. I feel like I write a whole bunch of notes. I feel like without notes and it doesn't really give me like a direction. So I feel like without the notes, I can kind of just be everywhere or just not organized, and it's harder to create in that process. So if I am working with someone, I definitely like need like kind of like a guideline of like notes or like this is this,
Yeah. So I know you just mentioned that you write a lot of things down for better organization. Now, my next question would be, do you feel like you have a lot of unfinished notes or thoughts or projects of that manner?
Yeah, almost everything. I know it's not like really good to say, but almost a lot of the things that I do or create is unfinished. And yeah, it's a lot of unfinished ideas. Yeah, definitely. Okay,
so I guess that kind of shifts us into the main conversation, which is going to be like how perfectionism like hinders you as a creative. So I kind of want to start with that, the unfinished work. What do you think that stems from?
I feel like it stems from a lot of different places. It can stem from, your mental, from like what you're going through at that particular time. It can just stem from, your habits. I feel like it has a lot of like stem points. For me personally, it stemmed from like, it really came a lot from my mental. I tend to overthink a whole bunch. And when it comes to the creative process, and I'm like writing my notes down, that just helps me think a lot more clear. Without that, I definitely feel like I tend to overthink. And then that concept, like, it drizzles out,
Yeah, it's crazy because, I mean, like we mentioned before, we're in two different creative spaces, but a lot of the experiences are kind of similar because I have also notes. I also have a lot of unfinished ideas, and I also overthink a lot, especially when it comes to like getting stuff done. I know last episode we spoke about how social media can hinder creativity, but it kind of goes into a little bit of this topic when it comes to like perfectionism, like just having like all this information, like you can start to overthink yourself as you're doing it, or like you can pretty much when you start to overthink what you're doing, you start to feel like it's not good enough, or like you feel like you're not at a point where you're happy with what you're doing. And it can like start creating like this like anxiety, or like a kind of like, I don't know, you just start feeling like it's just not worth it, And I know like for me personally, if I have like a lot of these like grand ideas, but if I don't like put it on paper, like in the moment, like I might still think of those ideas, but it's not as grand anymore. Like it's almost like a watered down version, because like I'm coming back to it and it's like, I don't even know where I was trying to go with this. So it's like, how do you how do you feel like you've been doing with that?
In the beginning, it was terrible because like how I was dealing with it was like, all right, cool. I have this really cool idea, this really cool concept. And then like, I would get through a portion of that and then my mind would just go blank. And I was just like, oh no, like, so like trying to like figure out what to do, and I would just scrap it. Like it would just be unfinished. So I would feel like I spent way too much time thinking about a concept until like my mind drew blanks, until I really just didn't like it or I wasn't satisfied with it anymore.
So not feeling satisfied, I do want to dive into that a bit deeper, because there have been times where I've gotten damn near to the finish line where like I just was like, just scrapped it, Yeah. And I think the negative side of that is that like stemming right from that perfectionism, when you're right there at the finish line, you put time into this. Like you put a lot of time and energy to this, and it's kind of like you're just throwing it away. So I know that's definitely another negative effect of like just being a perfectionist in the creative space. It's like you're wasting a lot of your time when you're not finishing things. Not saying you have to finish 100% of your projects, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Kanye documentary, but or just we know Kanye to like not have a lot of finished work. And I feel like he exemplifies us as creatives. Like we have a lot of unfinished shit, but what he does a great job at is like he puts stuff out there. And I mean, I feel like taking that approach kind of helps. So what are some other things that you think perfectionists kind of like tend to do that aren't necessarily great for creatives?
I want to say like being particular to the point where it's hard to work with other people and you're not really sure on how to work with other people because of like, because like, you're super particular and because you're that perfectionist. Your ideas may not be what someone else's like, has for what you guys are working on, or like the changes. You may not agree with everything with the other person is like wanting to change or add to like whatever it is that you're creating. And I feel like as a perfectionist, it's just kind of hard to work with others in general, unless you find that like person that you're compatible with to work with as a perfectionist.
100%. I can't really say I've experienced that too many times, but I do feel like I've been in certain situations where a change, I guess you can say, is brought up, and I'm kind of like, like, does it? And then like, just from experience, I've learned that like, just doing it and see how it works. Because I do feel like we spoke about the benefit is like being very, very organized and like having a process, but your process is not everybody else's process. So when it comes to like being a perfectionist, like you build up this way that you do things, and then like if somebody like tries to add something into that, like you could just kind of feel thrown off, in a sense. But that's not always a bad thing. And it's just like being perfectionist, just like kind of like it kind of shields you to change sometimes. You just mentioned that sometimes it could be hard to work with other people. Like I said, I haven't really experienced much of that because I feel like I've kind of been open. Like, yeah, I might be a little reluctant to do things at first when it comes to like changes or working with somebody, but I've been pretty open to ideas. So I guess as a perfectionist, from an artist standpoint, what are some things that you've also dealt with that you felt like just made it so hard to like work with somebody?
Just in general, not name calling, but just in general, like, I find myself, if I'm working with someone and like, we're sharing ideas and everything like that. Me personally, I feel like I have a layout in my head on how I like, hear a sound, or like, I feel like from the ideas that we share, I can create an emotion or a feel for like what I want. And whenever I express those ideas or whenever we get right to it, I feel like if that path is altered a lot, I feel like it's harder for me to create with the other person, or it's harder to create something that's not entirely or partially your vision.
So it makes it harder for you to see the vision which makes it harder for you to actually create within inside their vision.
Yeah, and just like really coming to like a common ground, I feel like it's really important because like we can both like throw out really great ideas at each other, but like if we don't really come to like a common ground, I feel like it just makes that process more difficult. Or it's like, well, that's not my vision, or that's not your vision. It's like, well, dang, you can't work with me where I can't work with you. So I just feel like in those cases, it'd be a little bit harder when we don't come to a common ground.
Yeah. I do think that perfectionism, like, it kind of limits the type of people you can work with. I don't think it's necessarily something that you can't get out of, but I do think, like, especially like if you don't understand that you're a perfectionist and you don't really know what to look for, it's going to be hard for you in your creative process for sure. Another thing I feel like we kind of have as perfectionist creatives is like a fear of like failing sometimes. Well, a lot of times I will say. I feel like being a perfectionist, you focus a lot on the things you aren't doing right, or the things that you want to change these things so much that you're focusing more so on like the weaknesses rather than like the things that you are doing. And we really started like compartmentalize like just those things that we want to change so bad that it leads us to change. Like it leads us to waste time, money, or energy on those things, or just trying to like make it perfect in a sense. And I feel like we struggled with that a lot as perfectionists.
Yeah, I definitely like agree with that, bro. And I want to say like we don't really spend too much time giving ourselves credit, and we're kind of like quick to throw ourselves out there for like, the mistakes that we do make. So like, for example, I can make a song, right? And come to you and share that song with you and be like, hey bro, like this part right here, I did this, and like, I could have did this better, this, that, and the third. And like, from your perspective, your first time hearing it, you can be like, I didn't even notice that. Like, that sounded like perfect to me. Like, that was good. And like in my head, I'm like, oh dang. So I do like, yeah.
Funny story, y'all. This literally just happened. We were talking about podcast intro music, and I was like, hey, I mean, you're an artist, like why not use your music, right? So he was over here talking about like making a whole new song, trying to figure out the vibes and whatever. And I'm like, just play me stuff you already got. And he played this one song. Well, he actually played a few songs, but there's this one in particular where he jumped the gun before even playing me the song. He said that like, yeah, there's a couple tweaks I want to make to it, and like played the song. And I'm just like, this is perfect. So the song that y'all heard in the intro is the song that he wanted to change. So let us know how it came out and if he was overthinking. But that leads us into a good conversation on like how to fight perfectionism. If you want to visualize what being a perfectionist looks like as a creative, just imagine you're trying to swim from one point to another. Being a perfectionist, you trying to swim from one point to another, you start to put these weights on you. And you know that the more weights you put on you, which is like these mental barriers that you're going through, the harder it is going to be to get to that point. And as easy as it sounds, all you have to do is just let go of the weights. So how can we fight perfectionism?
I feel like one of the ways that you can fight perfectionism is set deadlines. One example, like, I can give you guys is when I was in high school, I took art class, and, the teacher gave us like the objective, and he was like, all right, so I'm going to give you like a series of gesture drawings. So for each gesture drawing, he gave us 30 seconds. Everybody in that class was pretty much like super particular, and we like, focused more on our weaknesses than our strengths because we knew what we were good at already. So we spent a lot of time like, trying to fix the things that we wanted to fix and wanted better. So the first time I was doing the gesture drawing, like, 30 seconds for the picture I'm drawing, and then he changed it. And I'm like, I spent like 30 seconds on the hand. Like, you know, so I just feel like setting deadlines for yourself, not spending way too much time on your weaknesses, can really like get you through a lot of things out that like mental barrier of like that perfectionist mindset.
Yeah. And to piggyback off that, when like setting deadlines is huge. Like if you're working as a creative, you know, every project has a deadline. And I'm not saying all those deadlines get hit, but at the same time, I mean, you move much more efficiently than you would to like your personal projects. I mean, it's the same thing. Like setting a deadline for your personal projects as if you are your own client, I guess you can say, like just will help you like kind of get out of that, and it kind of push you to like just move, like actually move and not like be stagnant. And also to go into what Corsair was saying, focusing on your weaknesses, like that is a huge, that's a huge downside. So you just kind of want to flip how you think about it. Like you definitely want to try like write down the things that you are doing good at. So your strengths, like what are the things in this certain project that you're struggling so hard with? What are the things you're doing well? And trying to like once you're able to focus on what you're doing well, it just makes it so much easier because 9 times out of 10, like everything you're doing well is definitely more than like the little minute details you keep getting stuck up on. So Corsair earlier talked about the struggle of working with some people as a perfectionist. So I guess what are some things, or what is something that you've learned that you've done in your personal experiences to help combat that?
Being open-minded and being okay to trying something different. I think in the beginning, it was more so just my vision, just like, all right, I want things, I see how things are, and I want it how this is, like this. More so myself when I was by myself, and I want to say a little bit when I was working with people, or you know, when I was working with people. Now it's more so I'm a lot more open minded. I feel like being open minded can definitely change the game. That's a game changer. Really being able to hear other people's ideas and accepting, you know, different other than your own different is really good.
Another thing to help fight perfectionism is really focusing on the process, because we all have a why that we got started. Like for me and Corsair, it was to express ourselves. Like that's just kind of always been that. So it's like when you're starting to think about that why and going back into like the actual process, wherever you end up is where you end up. Like you're not really too goal focused. Like, yeah, it's good to have goals and it's good to have these accolades that you want to try to hit, but you can get too wrapped up in those at times and really forget like the process and why you even got started in the first place. So if you take the time to really focus on that, like you will make significant progress towards your goals.
I definitely agree with that. Focusing on your why and, you know, being good enough. Focusing on your why, like you started this because you love this and it's your passion. And sometimes like we can kind of get into that mental like break where it's just kind of like, all right, I'm not really sure how to explain it. Like we can put ourselves in this position to where like we spend way more time focusing on the negative aspects of our passion than really just embracing like the positive sides of it and really like, you know, reminding ourselves why we fell in love with this. I feel like it's really important. Everybody should know.
100%. Yeah. So those are our tips on how to fight perfectionism. Those are just personal things that we went through throughout our creative journeys. If you have some, definitely reach out to us and let us know, because we will be creating content out of this. So if we miss something, let us know, because it could definitely help somebody else. If you made it this far, we definitely appreciate you. Just to give you a recap, we talked about the positives of being a perfectionist, which weren't that many, the negatives of being a perfectionist, and how to combat being a perfectionist. Remember to subscribe to the Cage Creative Podcast on all your favorite podcast services. Watch this on YouTube if you aren't already. And if you want to join our community, reach out to us on Instagram at @thecagecreative_. We'll see you next time.